1 million children sit through his curriculum every single week, and the man who built it spent decades grooming, manipulating, and ing the women around him, including a teenager at Northpoint Community Church that he co-founded. The investigation is in, the findings are confirmed, and the board that oversaw it all is calling the results heartbreaking, without once apologizing to the victims. This is the Reggie Joyner story, and it is far from over. Welcome back to Anointed TV, the channel that refuses to look away when institutions fail the people they were built to protect. If you are new here, hit subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of story we cover, not to destroy, but because accountability is a biblical mandate, not an optional ministry strategy. We are breaking down the newly confirmed findings of the third-party investigation into Reggie Joyner, co-founder of Northpoint Community Church alongside Pastor Andy Stanley, and founder of Rethink Group, the parent company of Orange, whose children's curriculum is used by 1 million children every week across predominantly American churches. The findings confirm what survivors have been saying for over 2 years. To understand why this matters, you need to understand the size of Reggie Joyner's footprint in the evangelical world. Joyner co-founded Northpoint Community Church in the Atlanta metropolitan area with Pastor Andy Stanley, one of the most influential megachurch pastors in the United States. He served as the church's executive director of family ministry before going out on his own in 2001 to build what would become Rethink Group and the Orange brand. The growth was staggering. Rethink's annual revenue grew from $168,500 in 2001 to more than $4 million within 5 years, and by 2024, the Georgia-based nonprofit was pulling in $24 million annually. The curriculum itself became a household name in children's ministry circles. Lesson plans like Kingdom Quest, Table of Context, and GOAT, teaching teenagers to be great through Jesus' model of sacrifice and servant leadership, were widely adopted. The curriculum covered every age group from preschool to high school. When Joyner published his book articulating his philosophy of church family, partnership in raising young ones, the evangelical establishment lined up to endorse it. Andy Stanley called it a paradigm shift. Craig Groeschel of Life Church said Joyner's ideas would empower and motivate Christian leaders around the world. Sue Miller, former director of children's ministries at Willow Creek, called it a must-read. This man was not a fringe figure. He was a celebrated architect of how a generation of children experienced church. In April 2024, everything unraveled publicly. Just before the annual Orange Conference, the Rethink Board learned of allegations of sensual misconduct involving Joyner and then CEO Kristen Ivy. Both admitted to a past sensual relationship and resigned. After being confronted, Joyner admitted to other past sensual relationships. The board commissioned a third-party investigation by law firm Castaneda Plus Heidelman LLP. Over the course of 14 months, the investigation team reviewed thousands of documents spanning several decades and conducted interviews with more than 40 individuals. A digital forensics team extracted records, including emails, text messages, personal files stored on company-owned computers, as well as calendar entries and travel histories. Joyner was interviewed over multiple days. The findings, released as a summary in November 2025 and recently reported, are damning. The board confirmed that Joyner is guilty of essaying 6 women. 4 were employees or contractors at Rethink. 2 were women under his pastoral care at Northpoint Community Church. One of the women at the church was 19 years old when the essay began. Joyner's own position? He told investigators he believed all of the relationships were consensual, admitting only that the one involving a teenager in his church constituted SA. Let that sit with you for a moment. A man who groomed and manipulated women for decades told investigators the encounters were mutual. That framing is itself part of the predatory playbook. One victim described the conditioning in searing terms. She said she had been fully conditioned to compliance and silence, and described his advances as feeling like being shoved down a dark tunnel slide. Another victim said she had been so thoroughly captured by the dynamic that she was prepared to protect Reggie at all costs and believed that protecting Reggie was the only way to protect Orange. That is not a consensual relationship. That is a man who built an organization so thoroughly around his own persona that women believed the institution itself would collapse if they told the truth. That is systemic AD.U.E of spiritual and organizational authority. Here is where the story takes a turn that should trouble every person watching this. The board released a summary, not the full report. The investigation firm Castaneda Plus Heidelman LLP is also Rethink's retained legal counsel. A fact that survivors noted ensures client privilege, protects the board, not the victims. The timing of the original November 2025 statement was also telling. It was posted on a Friday before Thanksgiving, a classic news bureau move. The board called the findings heartbreaking and said the investigative results left them grieving for those who experienced pain, stress, and confusion. Grieving. Not apologizing, not naming what happened, not centering the survivors. Whistleblower Kim Nunes, a former project manager for Orange, said it plainly. It does not apologize or center the victims or demonstrate any kind of victim awareness at all. There's zero accountability for the board. This is what I expected, but there was 1% of me that was hoping the right thing would be done. The board's response to media inquiries? An anonymous email stating the summary had been available for 7 months and that no additional statements have been made or are planned. A former employee who spoke to investigators summed up the experience. I honestly feel the whole thing was sort of a joke. All of the questions we had, it was like, wait for the report. When the report came out, it was nothing. The board's own statement concedes that the nonprofit had no written policies about sexual harassment, no professional human resources department, and no procedures for reporting misconduct. And their response to that institutional failure, they express hope the painful lessons will be useful to others. No apology, no accountability for the structural conditions that allowed SA to flourish. Joyner's material is not gone. In January 2025, the existing curricula and the Orange brand were acquired by the Amazing Life Foundation. The president of Amazing Life said that the organization has no ongoing relationship with Joyner or Rethink leadership, but declined to answer any questions about royalty payments. That matters. According to the last 10 years of available tax records, Rethink was pulling between $1 and $3 million numbers in royalties annually, some of which went to Joyner, who also earned a salary from the organization. If royalty structures transferred with the intellectual property, the man confirmed to have S. Age 6 women may still be financially benefiting from curriculum children are sitting through right now. And Joyner himself? He has not been charged with any crime and reportedly still lives in Atlanta. However, the legal landscape is shifting. Georgia passed a law in May criminalizing clergy SA, prohibiting ministers from using consent as a defense. The behavior that institutions have long labeled an inappropriate relationship is now classified as a felony, punishable by up to 25 years in prison. Whether that law creates any avenue for accountability in Joyner's case remains to be seen. But its passage is not coincidental in a moment like this. I need to speak to this directly, because we are not just a news channel, we are a ministry channel. And this story carries a weight that goes beyond institutional scandal. Reggie Joyner built his legacy on a beautiful and biblical idea that the church and the family should work together to disciple the next generation. He packaged it in accessible, well-designed curriculum that countless sincere pastors and children's ministry leaders adopted because they genuinely believed it would help them raise children in the faith. And it is possible to hold two things simultaneously. That some of that work produced genuine fruit in the lives of young ones, and that the man behind it was actively exploiting women in the same season he was writing those lesson plans, giving those conference talks, and receiving endorsements from the most celebrated names in evangelicalism. What this case exposes is a recurring pattern in our Christian institutions. We elevate men based on their output, their books, their stages, their follower counts. And we create ecosystems so dependent on their brands that the people around them absorb the cost of protecting those brands. Women who were manipulated into believing they had to shield Joyner in order to shield Orange. A board composed largely of his lifelong friends and business partners, conducting an investigation through a firm that also serves as their retained legal counsel. An institution that was paying tens of millions of dollars but had no HR department and no sexual harassment policy. This is not a story about one bad man. This is a story about what happens when Christian institutions treat personal charisma as a substitute for structural accountability. Proverbs 11:14 says, "Where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors there is safety." Not abundance of endorsers, abundance of counselors, people with the authority and the courage to say no, to require accountability, to protect the vulnerable before the institution requires protection from a scandal. The victims in this case told the Roy's report that everything still feels unresolved. One former employee said, "I want the truth to be out there, but I've lost hope." We want those survivors to know that the church, the real church, the body of Christ that is not an institution or a nonprofit or a conference brand, sees them. Their pain is not collateral damage in a brand's reputation management exercise. Their testimony is credible, and their demand for full transparency is righteous. If you lead a children's ministry and Orange curriculum is in your building, This is not a call to throw it in the bin tomorrow morning. It is a call to ask harder questions about who profits from what your church buys, about what accountability structures exist in the organizations you partner with, and about whether the people in your building who hold authority are operating under the kind of oversight that protects the vulnerable. The curriculum should never be larger than the accountability. If this video helped you think more clearly about these issues, please share it and leave a comment. We read everyone. Subscribe to the channel for ongoing coverage of these stories, because they do not end when the headlines do. This is Anointed TV.